Welcome back to Reddit R Us. Today we're discussing alien abductions. So, people of Reddit that honestly believe they have been abducted by aliens, what was your experience like? Story 1. I never told anyone this story because I never thought they would believe me. I was home alone one evening and had gone to sleep for the night. I live with my significant other and 2 indoor cats, but she was out of state traveling for business. I woke up in the middle of the night. Wasn't sure of the time, but it was completely dark because my body was freezing cold. I actually like it cool when I sleep and usually have the temperature around 70 degrees or colder since I live in central Texas. But this was different. I was ice cold but wrapped in blankets. It was middle of summer, so evenings aren't cold. When I grabbed my phone to look at the time, it seemed to be off and I pressed the on button, but it didn't turn on. Since I was half asleep, I shrugged this off. I walked out of my bedroom to go adjust the thermostat and noticed that the cats weren't around. This was weird because these furballs are always hanging out in the bed or around the bed. Anyhow, I walked to the thermostat and tried to adjust it, but the power to the thermostat, I have a Nest, was nil and the power to the house seemed to be off. I peeked out of the upstairs window to see if any of my neighbors were having power issues and noticed that all of their outdoor lights were working just fine. From the time I woke up to this moment was probably 1 to 2 minutes maximum. I decide to wander downstairs to grab some water, but am startled when I realize there's a glow of light coming from the first floor. The way my house is situated, I couldn't see the light until I had approached the stairs. I found this odd because the power seemed to be out just upstairs, which didn't make a lot of sense. I started walking down the stairs and began to hear a faint humming noise. The noise had a high pitch to it, with arbitrary pulses of low sounds, almost like a muffled weed whacker that someone is throttling at random. As I continue to walk down the stairs, I spot a dark, slowly moving figure in the room with light at the bottom of the stairs. The next step that I take feels like I walked off the side of a cliff or was sucked into the floor. That is really the best way I can explain it because I don't remember what happened after that moment. I just lost all feeling from my body. My next memory is waking up again to the sound of my phone's alarm. Everything seemed back to normal. I sat there in bed, cat's back to being lazy in bed next to me, and tried to think about the 2-minute incident that happened in the middle of the night. I am not a sleepwalker, and I was definitely not dreaming. My security systems app showed the time whenever a door is opened or closed. I realized that my security system was disarmed on the app and that the front door had been opened and closed several times throughout the night. I pulled up my security footage from the exterior cameras and was surprised to learn that there was 0 footage from the night. Like the motion sensors reacted to a random car driving by around 10 p.m. and then the next thing is another random car in the morning. So someone or something walked in and out of my front door, but the cameras did not capture any footage. My neighbor across the street has a good security system that points at my house, so I asked if I could review the footage from his cameras. I told him some made up story about how I thought someone had broken into my truck. Anyway, he said it was weird because when he pulled up the footage from that night, his cameras did not record anything, just a time gap once again. My first thought was that I was sleepwalking and that the memory was a dream, but it just couldn't have been. When I looked out of the window in the middle of the night, I distinctly recall a red pickup truck parked the wrong direction in front of the neighbor's house. I always notice when cars are parked left wheel to curb because I've gotten a ticket for this in the past. Anyhow, the truck was not there before I went to sleep based on footage, but was there in the morning, again, based on footage. So the truck was there when I saw it in the middle of the night. I definitely woke up in the middle of the night, cold as ice, no cats, no working phone or thermostat, saw the truck out of the window, and then got warped by something on the stairs. A couple additional things were different in the house. The security system was disarmed, and I definitely armed it before going to bed. The light was still on downstairs, and that was absolutely off before I went to bed. My whole body smelled like burnt marshmallows. I know this is weird, but it's really how it smelled. And lastly, my 55-gallon fish tank that sits at the bottom of the stairs in the entryway was missing 2/3 of the water. Seriously, where did 40 plus gallons of water go? The whole area around the tank was bone dry and the fish were fine. I think I was mined by some thirsty aliens. Wow, what an intense and engaging story. I got the heebie-jeebies while reading it, like when OP said he saw a dark, slowly moving figure in the room with light at the bottom of the stairs. Some people mentioned that he must have been sleepwalking and imagining things, but how does that explain the time gap in both his and his neighbor's security footage? And don't get me started on the missing water in the fish tank. I feel like if he was sleepwalking and he did drain the fish tank, he would have left some evidence behind, like a bucket and a siphon being misplaced or something. The funniest, maybe creepiest detail OP left was that he smelled like burnt marshmallows. I'm just imagining some aliens, after abducting OP, roasting him over a campfire with some marshmallows, and then realizing they don't actually want to eat him before putting him back in his bed, then leaving and drinking a crap ton of water from his fish tank. Story 2. I was home alone in this little house I lived in the middle of nowhere. It was probably around 2 a.m. and I was just listening to music, enjoying having the place to myself for a change, when all of a sudden, my dog started going crazy. Normally, when someone pulls in the driveway or comes up to the back door, they go to the door where they heard the noise and peek through the blinds to see who it is. But this night, they are running all around the house from door to door, barking louder than they ever do. When I stood up to go see what the heck they were on about, I noticed that the whole house seemed to be lit up with a deep blue light. Turning into the living room, it became obvious that it was emanating in from each window. I put on my shoes to go outside and to see who was out there. But by the time I got there, the light had faded away. There was no sound of a car engine or really anything, and where I lived, you could hear a car coming from a mile away. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I had the weirdest sense of fight or flight where neither option seemed viable, like I was frozen to the spot. I wanted to turn around and get back inside, and then I just was. Right back in the chair I was listening to music in. As if I just blinked and there I was. Don't really like telling people about it because it skeeves me out so bad. Dogs have such good instincts, so if they alert you of something by barking a lot, make sure you're ready for stuff to go down. Especially if it's at 2 a.m. You never know if there's an intruder outside your house, be it a creepy person or a little green alien. Well, honestly, I don't know how you would protect yourself from aliens, but good luck anyways. Story 3. I'm not sure if I'd say I was abducted, but what happened was really weird. Was laying on my couch with a blanket over me, and I look at the clock and it says like 11:23 a.m. or something. Suddenly, a white flash happens and it's 12:40 p.m. It happens again 3 more times, and by the time I could comprehend what was going on, it was like 5:30 p.m. Every time it would happen, there would be like 15 minutes of confusion and trying to move. I was stuck in a dreamlike state until it stopped happening. Edit, old as F. But rereading this, I remembered that the only reason I said I was laying under a blanket is because at the very end, once I was able to stand up, I was on top of it. It sounds like a textbook case of sleep paralysis. I've experienced all of these things, including what seems like a demon in my room, all induced by the dreamlike state you're in while still being somewhat conscious. This is absolutely sleep paralysis. It is something that has affected me for years, and I have had numerous instances just like what was described. I remember once sitting down at night to watch Players Ball on HBO, and in a blink, I couldn't move and felt movement all around me. And a blink later, I was watching the end scene of Titanic. Like, what the heck happened to Players Ball? And where did I lose 3 hours? Story 4. When I was in 6th grade, I woke up one day with 4 very small holes on my upper right thigh. It looked like the skin had been cut out in perfect tiny circles, yet there was no blood. The circles were in a straight line and across my thigh horizontally, no more than 6 inches wide completely. I also felt very tired and couldn't remember what I had dreamt, which is weird for me since I pretty much remember every dream I have every night. I put band-aids on them and went to school as usual. The next morning, I wake up and there are 3 new holes right above the previous 4. I wake up once again very tired and drowsy, and was now weirded out by how symmetrical everything was that I showed my mom, who said it was most likely ant or spider bites. Next morning, 2 more holes above the previous 3, and the morning after that, 1. This is when I was seriously scared since the holes now formed a triangle that pointed to my knee and they weren't scabbing over. I was so tired and confused and was scared to go to bed, so I stayed up really late but woke up the next morning not even knowing when I had fallen asleep, only dark and then morning. When I did wake up, I was suddenly very alert, and when I threw my blanket off my legs, I found all the holes completely gone. No scabbing or scarring or any trace of the circles on my thigh. I showed my mom, and she just brushed it off as if they had healed like any other cut. I'm honestly not sure if this is related, but I do feel like there's a correlation. After this, I couldn't really comprehend math anymore. I had excelled at math all my life, but after this incident, it was like numbers had no meaning to me, and I couldn't figure out simple equations. I went to an advanced school and had been learning algebra and geometry, and was doing great, but then it was like poof, all my math knowledge and comprehension was gone. To this day, I can't even do simple addition problems without double checking them. Too long didn't read, was most likely probed. Aliens may have taken my math smarts with them. Man, it would have been so insane if you took pictures of the circles on your leg and then shown us. I hate how your mom just dismissed your concerns, especially when all the holes just disappeared so quickly. It should have raised alarms, but maybe your mom is really the alien running experiments on you. Story 5. Was camping in a campground in North Georgia with some friends. It was starting to downpour, so everyone left their tents in the woods and decided to rent one of the on-site cabins for everyone to sleep in. I decided I'd just sleep in my car because they wanted to stay up late and I was tired from kayaking all day. I woke up to the rain stopping and it was kind of cold in the car, and I had forgotten my sleeping bag in my tent. I checked the cabin to see if there was any room left, and the light was on and everyone was fast asleep around 3 a.m. I didn't want to squeeze in, so I decided to trek my way to my tent in the dark with a small pen light. In order to get to my tent, I had to pass by everyone's that they left. Mine was the last one, and even then was 50 feet from the previous tent before it. I got in my tent, covered up with my sleeping bag, and prepared to catch the last few hours of sleep before sunrise. No more than 10 to 15 minutes from me getting in my tent, I began to hear light whispers right outside the tent door. They weren't in English, and to my recollection, indecipherable, not any language I had heard at all. Just as the voices started, 2 orbs appeared together outside the tent. They weren't the same glare as a flashlight would make, and both were of 2 different colors that, to the best of my ability, had no real distinct color, just colorful. The whispers outside the tent began arguing louder between each other, but still in a hushed tone. And as the whispers grew louder, the lights began swirling around the tent, behind me, to the side, to the front, not in the movement that one could make with flashlights, and at this point, I realized no footsteps could be heard. I uncovered myself and knelt on the tent floor, preparing for the zipper to come undone like in a horror movie, and I was flipping through my mind on what option to take. I was the most terrified I had ever been. Fight or flight. The lights swirled faster, and the voices grew louder, but still breathy and whispery. My mind raced and I was sweating despite the cold. And then, just like that, the lights shut off like a switch, and the whispers stopped, and nothing but silence of an empty wood. I stood there as still as I could, and I didn't dare go outside that tent till the sun came up. It was, and still is, the scariest moment of my life. I hope this makes sense. I've never written it out before. If I need to answer anything, I can try in between moments at work. Interesting enough, I went to a horror movie premiere recently, and there was a scene that had the voices in it, and goosebumps ran up my arm. It was identical. I had something very similar happen to me when I was 13. I was home alone on our farm, as my mom and sisters were at some sort of high school sports thing. I had just finished chores for the night, and was heading back to our house. I had to take off my mud-encrusted lace-up boots, which takes forever, and started listening to what I thought was my mom and sister talking. I remember thinking it was weird, as it really didn't sound like them. It really didn't sound like talking, actually. My brain knew somebody was talking in a very loud and annoyed way, but I don't remember actually physically hearing it or being able to decipher the language. I was also starting to get a bad feeling over the fact that I did not see anybody come home while I was outside. Obviously, somebody could have just pulled in just as I went back into our mudroom, but I never heard either a car door close, the front door open, or the most damning, our psycho rat terrier start to bark. I finally pried my boots off my feet and headed inside. I called out hello while I passed through the kitchen heading toward the front door. Holy crap, the feeling that I just absolutely messed up filled my chest and dumped ice straight into my heart. It felt like the time when I was facing an aggressive bull and the fence line was 100 feet away. My logical brain didn't know why I was effed, but my instincts did. Because I'm lacking in survival instincts, however, I kept walking through the kitchen in order to see who was there. The voices were now arguing with each other, and I somehow knew they were talking about me, the idiot that was walking toward them. I eventually got to the breakfast bar that divided the kitchen from the front door area. There, I could finally make my body stop walking and froze up. Hanging in front of the door were 2 gray glowing orbs. The voices were very loud and very angry now, but in a weird, muffled, screaming way. I knew it was loud, but my ears weren't picking it up. Within a second, both of them had stopped talking, twirled around each other several times, and then shot through the ceiling. I ended up sitting at the kitchen computer, staring at the blank monitor, until I heard my mom and sister come through the front door about 15 minutes later. Story 6. I was about 8 or 9, and my mom tells me we were going on a day trip to meet her high school friend. Cool. I grabbed my Game Boy Advance because I know my mom's friend has kids my age and wanted to show them up in the racing game I had. I overheard this from my mom talking to her friend at her house. They told me to leave the room because they needed to talk about adult things. Little innocent curious me wonders what exactly are adult things that I can't hear. Were they gonna throw some new juicy cuss words out? Well, mom's friend had a little girl who would sleepwalk at night. Started when they moved into their house in Northern California. It was a suburban area, but not too suburban. New neighborhood with lots of empty homes and forest patches in between each community. She was about 4 years old, and they found her one night in the backyard just sitting there. After that incident, they decide they need to lock her in her room at night and bar up her windows so that she doesn't end up in the woods nearby, or anywhere besides her room really. Later that night, mom's friend and husband wake up to a loud boom on the side of the house. Felt like something hit the house because everything shook. They check on their boys, they're good. The boys didn't hear anything and went back to sleep. They check on their daughter, unlock the door, and realize she isn't in her room. They start to freak out, then hear a knock at the front door. They open it. It's the freaking sleepwalking 4-year-old daughter. They ask her where she's been and she said with the men, and points down the street. Pissed off dad sees 2 guys in coats walking down the street. He yells at them and starts sprinting at them. Mom's friend said coat guys didn't react at all. Coat guys turn the corner, dad turns the corner, and they're gone. Mom and dad check the lock and windows. No tampering. They notify the police, who pretty much say there's not much they can do, but will keep an eye out. Sleepwalking 4-year-old daughter is fine, isn't scared at all, just tired and goes back to bed. After that, my mom didn't understand why I was scared as heck that night. She believes she was abducted but refuses to tell me what happened. Even my dad tells me that he can't tell me the story. Says it's for my mom to share if she wants it shared. But overhearing this when I wasn't supposed to hear it had me tripped out as a kid. Story 7. I had a year-long experience of strange events that I've never been able to explain or have a full memory of. It started in winter working up north on a project. Our crew was put in a motel 10 minutes outside of the largest town in the area. I somehow got upgraded to a king-size bed with couches. Nice room. Our days were long, so I used the couches to stack my clothes in piles. Jeans, hoodies, etc. I had brought my entire desktop computer with me and was in the middle of a massive argument with my ex over Facebook Messenger at 1 a.m. during the second week up there. At some point, I opened my eyes and I was sitting on top of a pile of hoodies on the couch. The time was now 4 a.m. I rushed over to the computer. At some point after 1 a.m., I had stopped typing a sentence midway through. My ex had left a ton of messages throughout the night demanding I answer her back. She also left missed calls and texts on my phone that was still sitting beside the mouse. I figured I had somehow passed out, but wasn't sure how I ended up on top of my hoodies on the couch and not just fall into bed. Went to sleep normally for the remaining couple hours before work. A couple of days later, a stranger scenario happened. My routine was, we'd finish work, I'd come back to the motel around 9 p.m., shower, change, and drive into town for late night dinner at Boston Pizza, only restaurant open late other than McDonald's. So this particular night, I went through my routine, took a shower, changed, headed for the door, and when I got to my car and turned it on, something felt really wrong. I looked at the time, it was now 2 a.m. I had no idea how I had lost around 4 hours between showering and getting into my car. It felt weird. My whole body felt weird. I felt violated, like a victim would describe waking up from being assaulted while passed out. You feel violated, but you have no idea what happened. Not a single memory or explanation. I stayed up all night scared poopless trying to figure out what happened. Why was I missing 4 hours? If I had passed out, why didn't I wake up on the floor? Why did I feel violated? Etc. The rest of the project, nothing else happened, but once I got back home, things started happening that were just as weird. There's more to my experiences if people want to know. It only lasted for about a year, but those two events were the starting catalyst. I've never actually figured out what happened, but most people I've asked all seem to agree it had to be abduction events. OP continues the creepy chain of events in the replies. Okay, for the first month or so, nothing happened further, but then something weird started happening. I began waking up around 2 a.m. and not being able to fall back asleep until the sun came up. I would wake up and have the urge to turn on every light in the apartment and stay up, find things to do, and wait until the sun up before going back to bed. I started to notice that in my dreams, random strangers would show up telling me to wake up. If I tried to ignore them in my dream, they would always find ways to harass me and tell me to wake up, telling me it's really important that I wake up. Then there was a really vivid dream. I had gotten dressed up in my dream and driven to an upscale hotel. No idea what the context of this dream was. When I got to my hotel room in the dream, someone started knocking on the door, shouting, "Hello, hello," over and over again. Just when I was about to open the door, the phone rang. I answered, and the voice on the phone told me not to open the door. I kept telling whoever was on the phone that I really should see why this person keeps knocking, but the voice kept urging me not to answer the door. I finally hung up the phone, headed to the door, opened it, and woke up in a cold sweat. 3 a.m. Couldn't go back to sleep. These were the kinds of dreams. People trying to get me to wake up, and random flashes of bright white light that will light up everything no matter where I was or what time of day in my dream. I remember one dream being outside in the middle of a sunny day and seeing a bright white flash that overpowered the sun. And usually, at this point, some random person in my dream would run up to me and urge me to wake up, or tell me the flash wasn't part of my dream and I should wake up. Random people in your dream telling you you're in a dream and that you have to wake up is creepy as heck. And they were always strangers, no one I knew in real life. A precursor to these dreams was the urge to go to sleep early. I would have urges to drop everything that I was doing and get in bed, sometimes leaving lights on, TV on, in the middle of games, middle of eating, etc. There was no fighting it. I would put down the controller or my fork down and march right to my room and lie down. It was this weird zombie-like drowsiness, but I would always wake up after 2 a.m. and not be able to go to sleep again until the sun came up. During the summer, I took a trip to upstate New York with a friend, and we stayed at some motel overnight before heading further on our trip. That night, I remember knocking on my door and someone who kept yelling, "Hello, hello," just like in that hotel dream. I remember my friend was fast asleep, unfazed by the knock, but I ended up going to the door and unlocking it. Don't remember anything after that. I woke up sitting on the office chair by the desk around 6 a.m. I checked, but the door was locked and nothing had been taken. It didn't look like anyone had entered. I woke my friend up and asked if he heard knocking during the night. He said no. I told him what happened and he was pretty pissed that I would wake up in the middle of the night to open the door to a stranger. But there was no sign that I did or that someone had come in. Just that I somehow ended up on the chair and not the bed. I still feel like I was awake when I went to answer the door though. The weird thing was these dreams and urges to go to sleep wouldn't always happen. Maybe 2 to 3 times a week. But I was starting to fear going to sleep without the lights being on, all blinds closed, or I'd fight to stay up all night and just go to sleep during the day. After this, I was getting really fed up with how effed my sleeping schedule had become, and I started to notice when I'd get the feeling that I should go to sleep, I would take that as a cue to get in my car and head for the busiest section of the city at night I could find, filled with people, and I'd notice that the urge to go to sleep would go away instantly. So every time I felt the urge to drop everything and go to sleep, I would fight the urge and drive downtown. Anytime I felt like I was being watched too, I'd get in my car and go downtown. It must have worked because after a few weeks of doing this, all these strange urges to go to sleep randomly, dreams with flashes of white light and people telling me to wake up, all went away. I haven't had a single recurrence of these events since. However, I noticed I still have a fear of going to sleep until the sun comes up that I'm always fighting. I also recently noticed that pictures of the typical gray alien now scare the crap out of me and I hate looking at them. Even seeing the cartoon ones on South Park, I get mini panic attacks. Those pictures had never bothered me before in my life, but now they send me into waves of panic. I still have no explanation for the missing time up north, the weird dreams, or that one night at the motel in upstate New York, which I don't think was a dream. It felt very real and felt more like another missing time event. Most people I've told don't know what to make of it. My current girlfriend has noticed I obsess with making sure all blinds are closed with no open slivers no matter where I sleep. I told this story to someone at a party once and the guy came out and told me his abduction story, and he was pretty positive I had been getting abducted during that year and that they'd either gotten bored of me or had become a hassle with constantly trying to drive to places full of people to avoid the happenings. Other friends either offer no explanation or believe some sort of abduction scenario was taking place. Who knows? I have no memory of physically being abducted, but those weird feelings of being watched, being urged to go to sleep, feeling violated when waking up, that felt real and still bothers me. Added bonus, last year I fell asleep on my girlfriend's bed while she stayed up watching Netflix in the living room. I left the lights on. At some point in the night, she came to turn the lights off and says I woke up screaming and yelling, "F off! Leave me alone! Help! Don't touch me!" etc. She said it was the scariest, most blood-curdling thing she'd ever heard, and that literally seconds later, I'd passed back out and was asleep again, and she couldn't get me to wake up. Creepy. Oh my gosh. I just got goosebumps reading that story. I can't even imagine what it was like to experience those feelings, and I sure hope I never have to. When OP said he started to drive downtown to the busiest section to fight the sleeping urge, I was a little worried that he was going to say he ended up getting into a major accident, like the aliens were brainwashing him and controlling him, some Twilight Zone stuff. That year in OP's life must have been so mentally and physically draining, and it seems like OP still has some psychological trauma from it. Comment down below which story creeped you out the most, and if you ever had any experiences similar to the ones read today. As always, thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more crazy Reddit stories.